One of the most important things for students to realize is that intelligence is something you build over time. It's not something you are born with. And further, small improvements can compound over time to create almost unbelievable results. Just like working out helps your muscles grow, reading, writing, studying, preparing for and being tested, etc., helps your intelligence grow. The theory that your intelligence is like a muscle that can grow over time is called the growth mindset, and has been studied and espoused by Carol Dweck, a professor of psychology at Stanford, for over a decade. It is related to the research done by Angela Duckworth at the University of Pennsylvania, which shows that grit and the ability to persevere are a better predictor of academic performance over time than a student's initial IQ score. The opposite of the growth mindset is the fixed mindset, which is where you fundamentally believe that your intelligence is static. It's driven by your IQ, which you believe can't be improved, and in any given area of your life, you either have an inborn talent for something or you don't. People tend to be more growth mindset-oriented about some things and more fixed mindset-oriented about others. At MyGuru, part of what we preach is that students try to adopt a growth mindset about as many aspects of their life as possible. Why is this so important? The more you adopt a growth mindset, the harder you'll try to solve problems and keep going at a task until you figure it out, and this process builds intelligence. A character trait called grit is what leads to sustained effort in the face of multiple failures or obstacles. So, having a growth mindset and being gritty are highly related. We at MyGuru like to argue that there are 3 dimensions to the growth in your intelligence that occurs over time when you keep trying to learn something in a sustained, deep, and focused way. First, you become smarter simply because you remember more facts and definitions. But second, you also build new learnable skills related to math, reading, and writing that go beyond just remembering facts. You learn new strategies, concepts, and tactics to enable you to solve problems. And finally, you become smarter as your brain builds new neural connections, and in some small but meaningful way becomes more efficient and effective at solving problems. Now, let's explore these concepts in the context of an interesting performance rule we were recently exposed to when listening to a presentation by a business consultant named David Noor, the 1% rule. Imagine that you get just 1% better at something every week. In about a year, you will be almost twice as good at it. The 1% rule didn't seem quite right to us when we initially heard about it, so we decided to create a scenario that was easy enough to understand and work out the math behind the 1% rule to test it. Let's use a golf score to illustrate the principle. For those of you somewhat familiar with the game of golf, you'll know that a score of 72 would be considered excellent. Professional golfers achieve scores near par. The average golfer cannot shoot below $100 and is probably shooting close to 150 if they are truly following all of the official rules of golf. Some people play golf for decades before they are able to break 100 and start scoring in the 90s. Now let's look at what happens to someone who is not very good at golf and generally shoots 120 on average. But imagine that this person starts practicing and gets some lessons and becomes capable of improving by just 1% each week. Let's see what happens to their score. Starting golf score 120. Week 1, 120.0, 1% improvement. Week 2, 118.8, 1% improvement. Week 3, 117.6, 1% improvement. Week 4, 106, 1% improvement. Week 11, 108.5, 1% improvement. Week 14, 105.3. Week 19, 100.1, 1% improvement. Week 20, 99.1, 1% improvement. Week 21, 92.4, 1% improvement. Week 28, 91.5, 1%. Week 33, 87.0, 1% improvement. Week 34, 86.1, 1% improvement. Week 35, 85.3, 1% improvement. Week 36, 84.4, 48, 74.8, 1% improvement. Week 49, 74.1, 1% improvement. Week 50, 73.3, 1% improvement. Week 51, 72.6, 1% improvement. Week 52, 71.9, 1% improvement. As you can see, if it were possible to consistently improve by 1% per week, this golfer would go from being effectively an average to below average golfer, to a golfer that is capable of shooting par. The vast majority of recreational golfers will never shoot par. In this case, The 1% improvement rule implies a move from below average to, according to the United States Golf Association, the ability to achieve a score that would place you in the top 0.5% to 2% of all golfers in the world. This is the magic of compounding. The 1% improvement you generate next week gets layered on top of the 1% improvement you achieve this week. And as you keep doing this week after week, your math, reading, golf, basketball, communication, etc. skills just keep improving. No matter what you're studying, training, or practicing for, just try to get 1% better every week or at least every month.